Hi there. Just give me a second, please.
Nice, but let's go a little beyond this.
よーい今これはよりよいです皆さんこんにちはこれは私たちのビデオですビデオの名前は何ちょっと待ってください Okay, now we're talking. Welcome to our video. Let's start. As you have seen, today we are here to explain children learning a new language, the first chapter of the book, Teaching Languages to Young Learners. And to start with it, here we have Chivitina to introduce the topic with taking a learning center perspective.
Hi! To start with this topic, I want to explain to you some details. There are notable differences between children, teenagers, and adults regarding learning a foreign language. For example, attitude. Children are enthusiastic and lively as learners. Native accent. They can develop a better accent since they are not ashamed to talk in a new language. Active participation. Children go and do an activity, even if they do not quite understand. Also, children can lose interest when they have to perform an activity that results in difficulty for them. Keeping the motivation and focus is a complex task. Language. They cannot use the language to talk about the language. They don't know about the grammar, syntactic, and morphology because they simply use the language. But wait, these are generalizations. Every child is different and there are factors that influences in the development, such as the skills in the process of teaching children, linguistic, psychological, and social development. Maybe you are wondering what is the relation between this and a learning center perspective, but let me tell you that these characteristics are part of the difference between learner-centered and learning-centered. Learner-centered. In this, the principal objective is to focus on the child's interests, experience, backgrounds, talents, and so on. But this is a waste of the potential of the kid, since he or she ignores the possibilities of discovering or improving a new skill. Learning-centered. This is the opposite. In this approach, it's focused on certain activities that develop the knowledge and ability rather than spend time in creating games that are only fun for students. The purpose is to avoid limiting the capabilities of children when we have too much consideration and think that they are not able to succeed in challenging tasks.
Hello again! Now that we have learned about learner-centered and learning-centered, let's take a look at the perspective that Jean Piaget, a famous psychologist, has about children when it comes to learning, by the hand of Chivi Virtue.
Let's talk now about Piaget. For him, the child is an active learner of everything that is around he or she. For this reason, Piaget was concerned with how children function in the world around them, and how this influences their mental development. The child interacts with the world that surrounds him, and in this way, he or she solves problems that may arise in the environment. In this way, when finding measurement, problem solving is how you get to the learning. For example, when the child finds it difficult to put food in his or her mouth, he or she will use either his hands or a spoon. In this way, the action carried out by the child is not of a natural nature or an imitation. It is actively constructed by the child. The thought is derived from the action. The action is internalized or is carried out mentally in the imagination. In this way, the thought develops. The action is the most important role, since when acting in a situation, a goal is reached. In Piaget's psychology, there are two ways in which development can take place as a result of activity. These are accommodation and the assimilation. Assimilation occurs when the action takes place without presenting any change for the child, and in accommodation it implies that the child must adapt to the characteristics and environment that surrounds them in some way. Resuming the previous example, now the child who knows how to use a spoon now has the challenge of using a fork. At the beginning, he or she may want to use it as he or she used the spoon. This is the assimilation of the new tool. The child, realizing that the tips of the fork offer new opportunities to it, is when accommodation occurs and the child adapts to the new possibility and creates something new. An important dimension that Piaget neglects in the life of children is the social, different case and Vygotsky ideas.
Hey! Let's now meet Chiminiki, who comes to first explain to us the perspective of another psychologist, Jerome Brunner from the USA, who helped to introduce some of Piaget's ideas to the American educational system.
To continue with this chapter, I'm going to talk about Brunner. For Brunner, language is the most important tool for cognitive growth, and he has investigated how adults use the language to mediate the world for children and help them to solve problems. And here is when we use the scaffolding method. But first of all, let's talk about what does scaffolding mean? Scaffolding is when teachers and other adults modify the language to match the language level of students. This type of modification is called scaffolding. All students, including adults, learn better when the teacher scaffolds or adjusts his or her instruction to the level of the student. The language used is predictable within the routine, but there is a space within which the child can take over and do the language her or himself. This space for growth ideally matches the child's zone of proximal development. Furthermore, Brunner suggests that these routines and their adjustment provide an important side of language and cognitive development. Besides that, we can see how classroom routines may provide opportunities for language development. An example of this will be in classroom management, giving paper and scissors for making activities. The context and the familiarity of the event provide an opportunity for pupils to predict meaning and intention, but the routine also offers a way to add variation that involves more complex language. Routines can provide opportunities for meaningful language development because they allow the child to make sense of the new language from familiar experience and provide a space for language growth.
Stop there! Do you remember Piaget's perspective? Well, now we are going to contrast it with one more psychologist. This time, from the Soviet Union, we are going to learn about the perspective of Lev Vygotsky.
The difference between Vygotsky and Piaget is that Vygotsky gives more importance to language and other people in the child's world. The language is a new tool for the child. It opens up new opportunities to do things and to organize information through the use of words and symbols. For Vygotsky, development and learning have a social context. In a world where the child from birth interacts with other people, then the child is an active learner in a world full of other people, as opposed to Piaget's approach, which classifies the child as an active learner only in a world of objects. The people around the child are those who help them to do and understand much more than they can by themselves. To illustrate this point, let's take again the previous example of the baby and the spoon. It is possible that the baby can put the spoon in the food and can take a spoonful of food to the mouth. However, it may be difficult for him to fill the spoon with food. This is where the adult plays an important role in helping him by holding the hand of the baby and guiding him to fill the spoon. In this way, the adult and the baby achieve together what the baby could not by himself, and he also received a training, so the baby in the future will do it by herself or himself. The action of filling the spoon with food made by the baby reflects the baby's proximal zone of development, or CPD. This idea was used by Vygotsky to give a new meaning to intelligence. Then, instead of measuring that a child can do alone, Vygotsky suggests that intelligence is measured by what a child can do with qualified help. Interaction with an adult helps to learn to think and to think. Vygotsky says the child first doing things in a social context with other people and the language helping in various ways. The importance of the word as a unit has been downplayed by those who have developed Vygotsky theories, for example Landolf. However, the words have a special meaning for children learning a new language. The new language is very used in a meaningful way by the teacher and the student, and will then be transformed and internalized to become part of the child's individual language skill of knowledge.
Yo! We have already seen general and particular perspectives of how children acquire knowledge in the learning process. But now, let's see how much this can change when we talk about learning a language. And by the way, let me introduce you to Chibi-chan, who will help us with it.
To continue with the chapter, I am going to talk about from learning to language learning. In this part of the chapter, I am going to talk about 3 points, which are first, second, and foreign languages, learning the first language, and learning the second language. But first of all, I am going to focus on the first point, which is first, second, and foreign languages. There will be very little experience of the language outside the classroom, and encounters with the language will be through several hours of teaching in a school week. In the case of global language like English, however, even very young children will encounter the language in use on video, TV, computers, and film. What they might not be exposed to is street use. For example, people using the language for every day. Now, I am going to talk a little about the next point, which is learning the first language. In this part, some structures in spoken language are acquired late because of their connection with the written language, for example, relative clauses, etc. Besides, children have problems using words that express logical relations between ideas, like cause and effect. Structures with although or unless are also difficult for children. One implication for teachers of foreign languages to young children is that children will come into foreign language at the earliest stages, bringing with them different developed skills and learning abilities in their first language. And last but not least, I am going to talk about the last point, which is learning a second language. In this part, we have age and second language, in which children learn the second language better than adults, and young children can learn a second language particularly before puberty because their brains are still able to use the mechanisms that assisted first language acquisition. We have also the influence of the first language on the second, which is about restrictions on word orders. For example, the cat ate the snake. The cat and the snake do not have endings that show which is the eater and which is the eaten. Besides that, children become sensitive to the reliability of cues in their first language from early infancy. In the case of English, word order is more silent. Moreover, we have age and first language. In this part, we can say that according to studies of immersion language learning, young children seem to pay more attention to sound and prosody, whereas old children are more attentive to cues of word order. Furthermore, children are generally less able to give selective and prolonged attention to features of learning tasks than adults, and are more easily diverted and distracted by other pupils. And the last part of these points, influence of teaching on second language learning, in which the range of language experiences that children get in their foreign language lessons is likely to influence how their language develops. For example, If lessons provide opportunities to participate in question and answer type talk, then they will be good at that, but not necessarily at other, more extended types of talk.
Yeah! Most of us have started to learn English now that we are sort of adults. But what if we had started when we were younger? Let's try to figure it out.
Now, let's talk about advantages to starting young with foreign language. An experience in the UK found that language learning in primary schools was not as positive as expected, although in retrospect this seems likely to be due to how it was implemented, in particular to the lack of attention that planners paid to what would happen at secondary level, when foreign language teachers were faced with mixed classes of beginners and more advanced learners. Children who have an early start develop and maintain some, but not all areas of the language skills. One of the skills that is most developed when starting to study a language at an early age is listening comprehension. Pronunciation also benefits in the longer term. It is important to say that younger children learn the grammar of the second language more slowly than older learners. Although they start early with the language learning, the process is slower.
Yo! We have to understand that one thing is to speak the language, and another thing, very different by the way, is to know the rules, structures, and real nature of it. Let's see now the bigger picture.
Hello again! Going deeper in this, let's talk about the foreign language, describing the invisible. We can describe the language according to its use. This means how it is used in communication and how linguistics has divided. Let's talk about the usage. We can divide it into topic, notion, and function. In linguistics, the topic is what is being talked about. In other words, it is the content taught and organized around a common object, for example, about the family or animals. Notion is a concept. It can be a specific idea, such as vocabulary, and function is the act of the use of the language to achieve a purpose, and the interaction between at least two people. For example, if you want to offer help, you say phrases such as, "May I help you?" or "How can I help you?" Or if you want to ask for information, you say, "Could you tell me where is the library?" or "Could you mind telling me where the bus stop is?" In this, you are producing the language with a communicative purpose. According to linguistics, the language is divided into listening, writing, reading, and speaking. We must know that this improper division will not give us the results that we need, since the main source that young learners achieve a foreign language is by the spoken way. Speaking is the main medium to understand, practice, and learn a new language. A new language is introduced, practiced, itemized orally, and understood orally and orally. As you can see, oral skills are made up of more components: vocabulary, grammar, and phonology. Vocabulary is the development of words, their meanings, and links between them. Grammar is an important aspect to construct and interpret the meaning of what is saying. Also, it makes the difference between simple words and a discourse, which is a comprehensible and coherent text with a purpose to communicate. Phonology is not taught directly. As I have already told you at the beginning of this video, children can develop native-like accents. This will be in this way as long as they have a good model to follow. The best form to teach oral skills is to focus on words as concepts. Then the kid will be able to link and mix those concepts to create interaction. That is to say that it will be a discourse, because this word network will have meaning and be coherent. Interesting, right? But this is not an excuse to forget literacy. According to Cambridge Dictionary, it is the ability to read and write, but there are more skills involved. vocabulary, whether active or passive, spelling, which is the correct arrangement of letters, and comprehension, which is understanding the meaning of something read. Literacy should be taught with the speaking language too, but it's important to adapt this according to the age of the students and take into account the possible issues and obstacles.
So, we're about to finish this video, but before that, I would like you to keep some concepts for yourself throughout the upcoming videos that you will watch from the other groups. The first of them is that children actively try to construct meaning. This means that children need things to make sense, and if they don't find it, they are going to make it by themselves by the limited world knowledge they have. So you, as a teacher, should try to plan your activities taking into account the perspective of your students. Also, you should consider that development can be seen as internalizing from social interaction. So having your students working with their classmates is a good idea. And by last, you'd better make sure that your students have a great experience while learning the foreign language. Don't define your class like a period of time when you talk and ask your students to do things, but a one-time experience that they can take with them after they leave. If what they do while trying to learn English is remarkable, how do you think their English learning will be? Yep, exactly what you're thinking. With this, we write a period in our video. And for watching it until the end,
Arigato gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigato ne.
Arigato.
thank you so much.
And that's all, folks.